we'll go. I think they give you a 3, 2, 1. Yeah, they do. So we can go ahead and talk. Yeah. Oh, it didn't give us a 3, 2, 1. I hope it's recording. I can't tell. Can you?
I think
Yes, it is. Okay. We'll look really dumb at the first part. That's okay. Okay. So she said she always starts her Zoom session with just taking a few minutes to breathe. And so you can close your eyes. So Margot is going to read the poem that's in this book. And if you don't have the book, Breathing Underwater by Richard Rohr. It's on spirituality in the 12 steps. And I just found this so profound. It's a little bit hard to read. Richard Rohr is a little hard for me. May not be for Margo. She's so different. But it's hard for me. So I watch the videos. And on YouTube, Richard Rohr has a lot of videos. And to me, he talks maybe less complicated than he writes. And there's some terms in here. Today we're just doing the introduction. So there's some terms that we're going to go over that I think are pertinent to the lesson. But we're going to start with our breath exercises. And you can close your eyes or you can keep your eyes open. Doesn't matter.
And you want me to read well?
After we breathe. So we're going to just close our eyes for a minute and just take a few deep breaths and just center yourself and just get relaxed. This has really helped me. Kristen has suggested, I need to do this a lot. And then when you're ready, Margot, you can read the poem. We can just think about it.
Okay. Breathing underwater. I built my house by the sea, not on the sands, mind you, not on the shifting sand. And I built it of rock, a strong house by a strong sea. And we got well acquainted, the sea and I, good neighbors. Not that we spoke much. We met in silences, respectful, keeping our distance, but looking our thoughts across the fence of sand. Always the fence of sand our barrier, always the sand between. And then one day, I still don't know how it happened, but the sea came, without warning, without welcome even. Not sudden and swift, but sifting across the sand like wine. Less like the flow of water than the flow of blood. Slow but coming, slow but flowing like an open wound. And I thought of flight, and I thought of drowning, and I thought of death. And while I thought the sea crept higher till it reached my door, and while I thought the sea crept higher till it reached my door, I knew then there was neither flight nor death nor drowning, that when the sea comes calling, you stop being good neighbors, well acquainted, friendly from a distance neighbors, and you give your house for a coral castle, and you learn to breathe underwater.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And Richard Rohr had heard this poem. It's written by a nun. Her name's Carol Belleck. And he had read this poem years ago, and he actually lived in a little house in Albuquerque. And behind his little house, there was an AA group that met. And, the AA would come out and they would be smoking. They would be smoking out there. And it was in his very backyard, and it was very small because it's in Albuquerque. So he got to know these people, and he said they were just the nicest, the most honest people he had ever met. And so they invited Richard to come to their closed meetings. They really weren't supposed to do this. You're supposed to be, drunk to go to the closed meetings. But they let him go. And he said that from these meetings, he saw that there was more church going on within those walls, within that meeting, than there was at the churches that he had been to, he's a priest, in case you don't know who Richard Rohr is. He's a Franciscan priest. And he started the Center for Action and Contemplation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he just writes, he's really into non-dual thinking, which we're going to go into in a second, but I better follow my notes because I can get random. So when I was reading this and looking at it, the first thing I wanted to know was who the heck was Bill Wilson?
Oh.
I just wanted to know. And
The founder of
yeah,
AA.
that's
Okay.
one of the founders. Okay, so I watched several videos about Bill Wilson, and I wondered, how did Bill Wilson, get interested in the 12 steps? Well, turns out Bill Wilson was an alcoholic. I didn't know that. Did you all know that?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, and his wife, Lois, I was interested in his wife too, and this is so interesting. His wife put up with it. I mean, she didn't know how to change him. They lived together for, they're old. They made this, there's a man on YouTube that made a documentary. It's actually him talking, which is really interesting. You can check it out if you're interested. So Bill Wilson, he was committed to a hospital because of his drinking, and a friend of his named Aldi or somebody came.
Ebby.
And who is it?
Ebby.
Ebby. Okay, Ebby. Yeah, thank you. And you know the history. And I'm just going to abbreviate it. But anyway, he had a friend that came and said, you need a spiritual experience to get, and he was not open to that at all. He was not open to it. And he kept getting drunk, but then he would sober up, and then he would relapse. And so, long story short is, through another friend named Dr. Bob Smith, is it Wilson Smith? I forget. No,
Bob.
Wilson. Anyway, Dr. Bob. Anyway, this other doctor was an alcoholic too, and together they started AA. And it didn't start out like it is now, but it started out. But they decided that in order to really not relapse, they had to find another person to help. That was the secret. And so Richard Rohr put this together, and oh my gosh, it was like an aha moment for me too. It was like, if we don't transform and if we don't help other people, I get cold chills just thinking about this, then we relapse into our addiction. And Richard Rohr says we're all addicted.
All addicts.
We're all addicts. And most of us are addicted to our way of thinking. And I wanted to add this because I listened to Carolyn Miss. Do you all know who she is? She's wonderful. Oh my gosh, she's a wonderful speaker, writer. So she says that we're also addicted to our wounds, what's happened to us in the past. So I've been looking at that this week during my contemplation time, and we'll talk about that. And my wound, was, and Ruth doesn't know this, so I'll just throw it out there quickly, is that I was married for 31 years and got divorced. And so it's like a death. And Robin too was married for a long time. And it's a death. So as soul sisters, not all of us have been divorced. Not all of us have been widowed. There's, like Melinda, she's still married, and it's okay. We all have things. Maybe we're addicted to dual thinking. Okay, and that's where I'm going to go into talk to you about what he talks about, dual and non-dual thinking, because that's a term he uses, and I wasn't exactly sure until we studied that book about, and you've got the copy, you can hold it up. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
hand me that just a second. I
It's
can
like a
show it
really
on the
good one.
screen. Yeah. So this was a book that we just studied by Adam Hamilton, Gray, Where Faith and Politics Meet, Seeing Gray. So when we see gray, that's non-dual thinking. Dual thinking is like black or white. And there's a lot of people that are stuck in that thinking, like, I don't want to talk about politics because that's such a
Don't go there.
no, we don't have to talk about politics, but you know what I'm saying. It's like,
There's
let's say,
tension in everything.
Right.
Hot
Right.
and cold.
yes,
Hot and cold, all the opposites. That's where we, and maybe you're coming to that next. It's not only just having an opinion about whether one of those is right or wrong, but it's also about actually labeling those things helps.
yes,
keeps us judgmental in a
Right.
non-judgmental state.
right. And Rohr says that one of the ways that we can begin contemplation, which we're going to talk about at the end, is to watch yourself watch yourself, see yourself, and that's called the seer. And it's a higher level of consciousness when you're able to see yourself doing that. And the Enneagrams help me because I see myself judging a lot. Because I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, and we like the way things look, and we're about success.
I'm sorry, I have to go.
Oh, meow. We will miss you.
I know. I love the choir, but I hate
I
having
know.
to leave early.
Okay, Pam, you'll have to sit down here so you can be on YouTube.
Yeah, you got to get on YouTube.
We need another person
Nice to meet
or
you.
somebody else
Great
come
to see
and
you.
scoot over. Anyway, so getting back to dual thinking, Dr. Oz says that children, they're dual think. We need to be dual thinkers because that teaches us right from wrong. You go through this stage of being a dual thinker, and that's important. The laws are important. Like, you know, kids they really don't know what tall is unless they know what short is. So it's learning, you learn the rules, and this is what Jesus was teaching too. You learn the rules, but then you learn when there's gray area, and sometimes the rules don't, apply, and there's gray area. So that's important. And a lot of people never get past the childhood level of things are tall or short or black or white, or she's black, I'm white, we can't be friends. You know what I mean? It's just like it's all or nothing. They're Republican, I'm Democrat, they're Auburn, I'm Alabama. You know what I mean? They never get past that. And you see that a lot. And I will mention to you, if you don't know what spiral dynamics is, another term to write down, to look on YouTube. Spiral dynamics is so interesting. It's about the different energy levels that we go through, and you have to go through them all. Anyway, okay, so that's random talking for a minute. Okay, so I've got a question for you. What are some other areas? I told you about my area of addiction, which is woundology, I call it. And I find myself talking about it. And then I'm the watcher, and I'm seeing it and I'm thinking, okay, you're going back to that wound because it's giving you some kind of something. It's helping you maybe sometimes it helps me relate to people. Sometimes maybe I use it for them to feel sorry for me, whatever. So I have to think about that. Why am I using this wound? Okay, so there's other things that we can be addicted to besides thinking, drinking, drugs, and our wounds. What are some other things that you can think of that we can be addicted to? Food. That's a good one. Yeah, I use that one a lot. Food is like it's like
Pleasers, being pleasers,
pleasers. Uh-huh.
habits, things that you do on a regular basis. And if you change, it's like
Like what? Like what habit?
well, routine. Yeah, routine things, and you do it, and then something happens and you can't do it, and you feel really bad. Oh, I didn't get this done. It's more of a guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's a control
Mhm.
that a lot of times, as a Enneagram 9, I sort of present myself as this person that's very easygoing, and yet I'm not. Evidently, I am not. Because down at the bottom of the 9s, it is a lot about control. It's just not in a different, I like to control, but not in an overt, obvious kind of way. And it's all about what's important to me. There's lots of things I let go, and I am very easygoing because I don't have a strong affiliation to whatever that is. We can go anywhere for lunch, I don't care. But other things that are very personal to me or that are important to my value system, I like to control that. And I don't like it when I'm not, when I see myself not in control of that, kind of thing. And I don't really like being that way either. I don't like realizing that I'm
Like what do you
that
mean?
control.
Like what do you like? Can you give us an
Based
example?
on your opinion. your likes and dislikes based
Well, see,
on.
part of the 9 is I can take everybody's opinion and agree with it, kind of thing. That's part of what 9s do, is that we are merging with other people. So I can take Angela's opinion about something, and I can see the value in that. And then I can take Nancy's and see the value in hers. So much so that oftentimes I don't ever arrive at my own opinion.
Yeah.
And then, but those times where I have, then it's like,
So you doubt yourself, you doubt
yeah,
your
it's
opinion?
sort of, yes, there is a certain amount of that says, okay, I kind of become this wishy-washy, I feel like a
Mhm.
wishy-washy kind of person because I'm kind of absorbing wherever and bouncing wherever anybody goes. There's a lot of good in that, in the sense that I have always been
Peacemaker.
the one that
Mhm.
can bring people together, because I can see that, okay,
Mhm.
that's a good thing. But just there is deep down, there's sort of a control aspect of that. It says like, that's stronger than I would like to admit.
Mhm.
So that's my opinion.
But I think it's a good thing that you can absorb other people's feelings.
It can be used for good.
Exactly, exactly. 'Cause a
It
lot
can
of
be
people
used
are,
for good.
well, but I mean, it sounds like that is stronger than your wanting to be that strong person or that person who's in control.
Maybe that's where you saying that, because where I have gotten in trouble before is when I come to a place of powerlessness, or I can't figure it out, or I want to figure it out and can't. It's like I was not willing to be vulnerable enough because of my reputation of being
Because of your
the one who
ego
knows.
or ego.
And so
Yeah.
when we were struggling a bit back in Texas, and it was, I didn't know how to say I need help. I didn't know how to say it because that's not where I had always got my identity.
And to add on to that, I'm very much an empathizer like that. Like I can see so many sides, but then I get mad with somebody who's so rigid.
Mhm.
It's like I want them to take on some empathy or to see other people's sides of it. I don't have a lot of tolerance for somebody who's so rigid.
Yes.
And it's like, well, that's their,
Mhm.
it takes all kinds,
Mhm.
but I have a hard time with, somebody who's just all one way and won't look at other people's
Right.
feelings.
Yes.
Yeah,
I very much judge people who judge people. So I'm not like, look, I'm judging people, and they're judging people.
That is exactly what I do. It's like,
I
yeah.
know.
Yeah, I think that's a great, we all do. I mean, we just do.
Yeah.
And that's what he's talking about, is that
right.
you do it before you even
Think about
it's
it.
an instinct almost that we've already put it in our dual thinking, and we're trying not to judge, but we do.
Yes.
Right.
And so now the first step is evidently to recognize that
Mhm.
and to begin to become conscious about it so that we can learn how to deal with that.
Eckhart Tolle calls it the watcher. So when you see yourself, that's your true self. And that's how you can recognize your true self, your soul, versus the ego, Richard Rohr calls the false self. That's the little container that we've built, to house our soul. And I'm really interested in that and how it goes together, because the body's not evil. It's not like our body's the bad and the soul is good, because they're integrated. And God wants us to, our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. He wants us to take care of our body, but there's but our mind, we have like a reptilian mind that's trying to protect us, and it's fear based. And I do this all the time. I think about the future and I'm scared. Am I going to have enough money? And I'm watching myself. So that watching is my true self that's saying to me, and it's God, it's your connection to God. And that's, my true self, my soul saying, Jill, God's got this. You're going to be okay. You don't have to live in that fear. You don't have to worry about, your son that's in Arizona that's, at the start, because I worry about him a lot too. And it's like, that's just my monkey mind. And I go over and over and over, I lay down at night and I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out. So that's where contemplation comes in, and I'm leading up to that. But
Can I add my wound?
yes,
Please?
yes.
So early on, it was several lessons ago, and I kept
Mhm.
talking about.
Can I put you on?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't want to be.
Okay.
And I was talking about work, how I was,
Mhm.
and I kept asking people to pray for me for work. It was driven by racism, and that's kind of a difficult topic in this group,
Right.
but that is my wound.
Mhm.
Everything for me kind of goes back to that because it's
Uh-huh.
happened to me several times.
Oh.
So when I've had
Mhm.
at work, I ended up having to go to HR and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. So that is my heavy wound, and I try my best not to talk about it,
Right.
but it just happens,
Yes.
it just,
Mhm.
so that's my wound.
I
Well-
think talking about it is the beginning of freedom for
Mhm.
the whole world is to talk about that.
Exactly.
That's a very important. I mean, it kind of makes me want to cry. I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, me too. And I will add that I'm taking this Speak and Inspire course, and there's a place that good people that can relate to other people. They some people just always stay up here and they're never vulnerable. But when you take people into that place where you're vulnerable, like if I don't ever talk about my divorce or whatever, people may not know that I have a real wound there. And so when you talk about it with the safe group, you take people to that place and then you show them how to come out of that place. And that's how we witness to other people. And I feel so special to be in this group because I think all of us have these gifts and all of us have our woundedness. And when we know that we can take somebody down, but we help them come back up. And that's the whole transformation. That's what Jesus wants us to do. That's the gift. That's the pearl in all this.
And
Okay.
I'm going to add to
Okay.
Thalia's comment is sometimes I feel judged for being racist because in my mind I don't see color.
Mm-hmm.
I see character.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to be honest with myself about this, and I wonder if I'm kidding myself, but still, I think seeing both sides of it would help each other to get through it because I feel like many times maybe I'm misunderstood or I'm not very clear about where I'm coming from. But I feel sometimes that judgment comes very strong of judging as this person's racist. And where I'm coming from, like I said, I just don't see color.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe voicing it would help other sides, like people like me as well, to come to a different conclusion.
Exactly. I agree with that. That's why early on when I was talking about work, I never said like, oh, I just said I'm having some issues at
Right.
work, so just now you kind of understand what was going on.
Yeah.
So exactly. So I didn't want to bring it up then. I'm like, okay, I got some things going on at work, but that's really what it was. I had to go to HR and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. So you're right. It's one of those things that has to be brought up for other people to understand. Otherwise, they may not realize what they're doing.
Yes, exactly.
And I find myself, like judging people. Just little things. It's like, why would they wear those shoes with that outfit? That's so dumb. And I catch myself thinking that, and it's like, Jill, that's so petty. Why would you even care? But it's a three thing, and the threes are really, they think about things and whatever. Okay, going on to others. So we talked about the true self, and the goal of the 12 steps in religion is to transform lives from small ego self that doesn't to the higher self. And so we're going to run out of time, and so I want to put I here's something I struggle with, and I'm going to ask you all, why go to church? I mean, can't we just, stay home and
Have a good day.
Look at home, watch it on TV.
watch it on TV? Why do we need to go to church? And why is church important? And I want to hear your
I
else.
think it's an important conclusion in this chapter, though. Can we get to the conclusion in the chapter? Is that part of it?
What
The conclusion about, letting go, having faith to let go. When you hit bottom,
Mhm.
that's the turning point. And
Sometimes you do have to, I think you have to suffer to come back up. You're down in the valley, and then you have, but we're going to talk about that as far as contemplation.
okay, before we
Not-
run out of time, but
Yeah, well-
page 5. Page 5, I think
We're
that's
gonna talk about
important.
it next week too, right?
Yes, next week we're going into chapter 1. But I
know.
they're just wanting to cover one other thing about why we go to church. Why is it important? Because this is something that I hear all the time. I don't want to go to church. Those people are judgmental. They're, it costs money to go to church. I'd rather just stay home. I don't have the money to be in a group, whatever. I just want to stay home. And I'm around a lot of people that do not go to church, and
We all are.
we all are.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you all come? What's the reason that you come? I want something good to tell people.
Energy, the energy about it. I can sit by myself and I can watch Zoom church and get a little something out of it. But when I'm around like-minded people like you all, then it's the energy that's in the room that I don't think you can get from just watching. I think you have to be next to people to
Mhm.
feel energy.
Good point. I think the energy is really, really important. And for me, I'll just throw this out there. It's support. It helps build. It just makes me feel so good to know that I have that little group that I can throw something out and people would pray for me or think about me. And you can't always be there to help somebody, but maybe somebody else can. Like Lynn, Elena's helping her today, and that's sweet that we have that support and that help. And we couldn't all go up there, but that's nice. So okay.
And the connection with others gives us support, but it also takes the focus off of us.
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
knowing what everybody's going through, then that turns my prayer life, instead of just being me centered,
Exactly.
into
Self-
other centered.
Self-indulgence and small self.
And that
Well,
was
also, it's the very thing that we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about, the fact that we are consumed by or addicted to our own way of thinking.
mhm.
And to me, the beauty of this group is knowing that you're not all just like me,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and you can challenge my thinking
Mhm.
and help me see something different. And so that is, to me, very extremely important. And that's sort of a difference in between why I go to church. I go to church to worship.
Mhm.
I come here to be part of a supportive group where I can feel like I can be vulnerable. I can be who I really am. I can be in my worst and in my best.
Mhm.
And you will support me through both. And that's what I'm looking for.
And humbled. And
Mhm.
humbled.
Yes. Yes. So letting go was in this first chapter?
Well,
No,
Or the
this is
one-
just the introduction.
Oh,
Next
this
week
isn't the-
Next week is the first
I
step.
did get too far.
'Cause I can-
Yeah, next week is part 1 where we
I
have
love
to
letting go.
where we
Thank
have
you.
to
I
let
didn't
go.
wanna-
Next
I didn't
week.
Yeah.
want to let that go.
Right.
No, I love that conversation. I can't wait to have that conversation.
Yeah, so next week we'll talk about letting go, but
Okay.
he also talks about contemplation. And so I made a chart because I want to make